Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Now, Jokic absolutely sucked in these playoffs, and there's no understating that. And when I say he sucked, like obviously, like the production doesn't look like awful whatsoever. But it's the fact that relative to our expectations and the reputation that he has garnered in this league, and the fact that he's supposed to be clear-cut the best player in the NBA, was a very disappointing showing for Nikola Jokic against Minnesota. And that does bring up quite a few question marks, whether you want to talk about where he ranks in just players right now in the league. And then it opens up all-time discussions and then also just Denver's direction. Now, obviously, Denver's direction as a question is more or less like you keep building around Jokic because he is probably still the best player in the world. But there is a lot in terms of how you have to build around Jokic that actually might shift, especially with how the modern NBA is shifting towards more physicality and less offensive quality in the past few years. Now, the series versus Minnesota was disappointing, but the thing is, this is 3 years in a row now where Nikola Jokic has visibly struggled against physically athletic teams, whether it be Minnesota in 2024, OKC in 2023, and now come back again, Minnesota in 2026. Now, obviously, he put together still 26, 13, and 10 in this series against Minnesota, but the efficiency was disgusting. And it wasn't really the turnovers that were that bad. He still averaged 4 a game, but against OKC, with their speed to be able to play those gaps and passing lanes and actually harass him a bit more, send those blitzing doubles, like he's actually going to struggle in terms of the ball security more against a team like that. But against a team with a bit more length and physicality across the board, like Minnesota, that's where you see him struggle with the shooting efficiency more than anything. And he goes for 48% effective field goal percentage compared to 61% in the regular season. And he goes for 45% from the field, 19% from three. Absolutely disgusting in terms of like the three ball, which actually got cut in half in efficiency. He was making 38% of those in the regular season. But the fact is, though, obviously it's a hard matchup for really anyone, and especially for a big man with no speed advantages on the floor, especially against a team like Minnesota with the Rudy Gobert matchup. But nevertheless, these are 3 inexcusable losses in a row that really put Denver in this horrible position in the first place. And in those 3 games, between games 2 to 4, this guy put up 25 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. Sounds sexy, but he shot 34% from the field, 15% from 3, 36% effective field goal percentage. That is disgusting, and legitimately was outplayed by Rudy Gobert in the most pivotal games of the series when they went down 3-1. That cannot happen, especially like considering the reputation that he's left. And Jokic isn't a bad defender by like any like for say, because like he's a great team defender who can play very cohesive. The drop coverage, the hands and stuff, the anticipation, playing that gap, he can do it relatively well. But at the end of the day, this is a negative athlete on the floor in your most compromisable defensive position. So Rudy Gobert completely outplayed him in terms of what Minnesota needed from Rudy compared to what Jokic was able to deliver for Denver from what they needed from him. And it's no different. Like, I mean, against OKC last year, like we saw him have these Herculean performances. I'm going to, on the top of my head, because I didn't write these down, but I think he would have had like a 42, 22, and 7 game. And he would have doubled down on that similar stat line also in that series. So he had some Herculean performances against OKC. But the fact is, this guy's floor has actually been exposed a little bit more. And this is why his best player in the world standing is really slipping away very fast right now. Because there's so much value in having that ultra high ceiling, like Luka Doncic has showed. But when your floor is actually really low and that can be exposed more so, that is where it becomes a bit more damaging to your team. And that's where guys like SGA and Victor Wembanyama, their floors are so high. And we also thought that with Nikola Jokic, and it is, like, I mean, the production he's still able to put up night to night on, like, most of the time it is relatively efficient. At his worst, he's still giving you maybe 55% effective field goal percentage in a series. But fact is, he's had some really poor performances against these specific teams and archetypes. Against OKC last year, he had 4 shitfest performances out of 7. And that included those, again, same games 2, 3, and 4. And he averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists, 5 turnovers as well. 33% from the field, 18% from 3. Very similar, 37% effective field goal percentage. So actually worse against OKC in those specific performances. Only thing is, against OKC, he can actually rise to that ceiling a bit more effortlessly, considering the overwhelming size advantage he has. But the thing is, though, when we look at what Denver was trying to ask from Nikola Jokic, especially in that game he went 7 for 26 in, like, the fact is, Jokic can actually beat Rudy Gobert one-on-one in the large-scale big picture, like when you give him those possessions. But it just doesn't stabilize Denver's offense to the level that it needs to be at, considering how much they actually give up on the defensive end against a team that is so athletically powered like Minnesota. And the fact is, like, Jokic, like, running continuous post-ups, elbow catches, like, getting those inverted ball screens, trying to get some downhill penetration, it's not that effective against Rudy Gobert in terms of just the large-scale team efficiency in the half court. And it really just slows down the game a lot of the time. And the thing is, Rudy won a lot of those possessions, which he usually doesn't do this year in particular. And in terms of just what we've seen, the dynamic with Denver the past few years, like with Jokic, it's more about in the postseason, it's more been about forcing the production, forcing the numbers, instead of just that glamorous efficiency and offensive hub juggernaut that he was during the championship run and pre-championship run as well, especially when this Denver team was healthy. And it's upsetting because this was the healthiest that Denver probably could have gotten. I know Aaron Gordon had the hamstring injury, but Denver were healthy for the most part compared to a lot of the years that they've had when Jamal Murray was struggling, when they had really undermanned talent on the roster. Like, this was a great opportunity for Denver, and they could have hopefully have coasted a few games in the Spurs series, waited for Aaron Gordon to come back. And when you have Aaron Gordon playing that role against Victor Wembanyama, that big physical guy at the hip, making him uncomfortable, you have a real chance in that series. And you don't get to see it through because you couldn't take care of business against Minnesota, the matchup that you guys chose. And in large part, not really to do with anything coaching-wise or personnel-wise. I think the biggest reason for this was just the underperformance that you got from your stars. I know Jamal was bad, but at the end of the day, yes, Jamal played like a superstar this entire season, but it does come down to your best player. And obviously for Jokic, again, it's a hard matchup. It's hard enough to go against, and like zooming out the last 3 years against OKC and the 2 bouts against Minnesota, it's hard to go against these historic rim protectors whilst also dealing with this obscene, the extra crush and gap help on any of his drives, on any of his post-ups. It's insanely hard to deal with. But if anyone could have dealt with it, it could have been Nikola Jokic, but he just couldn't. And then what exacerbated the offensive issues was the fact that he just couldn't make any threes. And when his 3-ball leaves him, that's when Nikola Jokic's floor gets exposed majorly, because he does resort to it a lot in these playoff environments as like a bailout sort of shot. And the fact that he made 19% of his threes, literally cut down from 38% to 19%, that was disgusting. And the thing is, Rudy Gobert, like, you got to give a guy like him props. There's literally no big man in the NBA that can actually run around screens, chase him on the perimeter as well, hassle him on the perimeter, apply that ball pressure, but then also brace those drives and offer those last-minute contests. And it's because the guy's jacked. Like, through his core, he can absorb so much contact on the fly as well when he is recovering on those drives. He can cut off angles, and then that wingspan is fucking absurd. And in terms of like the contest he was able to offer close to the rim as well, but also the contest he was able to offer on those closeouts, super disciplined, super composed the entire series. Rudy Gobert might be pushing himself back into that top 40 zone in the NBA in terms of just players around the league. And he's a top 3 defender on the planet, like, regardless of anything that you believe. Obviously, Victor is probably number 1. Chet or Rudy, interchangeable 2 or 3. That is where Rudy makes his money, and he just proved it this series. He earned $40 million literally from what he just did against Nikola Jokic. Minnesota are not anywhere close to this position if Rudy isn't on the floor, and he's the only talent in the NBA that can put together a defensive performance for an entire series like that against the greatest and most talented offensive player this game has ever seen. I just want to quickly just harp on that. But in terms of the conversation back to Jokic, like in terms of where he stands in the league right now, it is an interesting question. I mean, the fact is he's still the best offensive player in basketball in terms of how he can affect the team offense. He's probably still the most resilient scorer in the NBA, which by title, I think SGA might be taking that at this point in time. We'll have to see a bit more from SGA as he go against more testing defenses, which It might not be LA, but when he gets to the conference finals, then we can actually grade SGA once again. Because again, his SGA's playoff performance last year wasn't anything absurd from himself as an individual standpoint. And just with Nikola, like obviously he's the best passer in the NBA, he's the best connective piece in the NBA, best offensive hub. He leads just the most glamorous, just simple, basic offense that executes in the large scale. And like if you look at the regular season, also like obviously he had the injury, but he still put together 28 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists on 62% effective field goal percentage. So the guy's still a freak. He's still the best post-up fulcrum in basketball as well. The physical and position he brings to the game, the over-the-top advantages, the shot touch, obviously so super glamorous. The three ball was there in the regular season. So whether you have him as the best player in the NBA or not, that probably resides in how you like, it depends on your criteria, right? The thing is, Jokic's offense is something that no one in the NBA can bring, but obviously there are drawbacks in these playoff environments with his defense and the lack of athleticism, and sometimes the lack of pace, and then the lack of composure too. And it just depends on what you actually prefer. Like a lot of people love the versatility. That's why a lot of people used to love Giannis over Jokic. That argument even after Jokic won the title. So people will look towards Wemby and SGA because they give up less in other aspects of the game. But what this guy does on the offensive end, only SGA rivals. And SGA, I don't think does and like anything near what Jokic can do with the efficiency in the large scale and like the dependability of his like offense. It's not even just the dependability as a scorer, it's how he can manufacture advantages better than anyone in the NBA. So I think he's the second best player in the NBA though, like in saying that, because obviously I value what he does, but the fact is SGA's just been better than him the past 2 years. Yes, you can look at the stats, you can look at the advanced analytics. I don't care whether you want to look at their head-to-head matchups or just like literally just the eye test when you watch SGA and what he brings to OKC, that unique value of shot creation to a team that really lacks the shot creation and a team that really didn't have J-Dub all year round and had to depend on second-year AJ Mitchell to be their secondary ball handler. Yes, Chet Holmgren's an all-star. He can't create offense anywhere near the same resiliency. A lot of Chet's offense is really just off-ball gravity and the roll man athleticism and whatnot. SGA carries that half-court offense, and they're still the championship leader right now. And in terms of what Jokic has brought to Denver in these critical situations, it hasn't matched what SGA has done. And obviously, we need to see SGA get tested against a high-level defense. And again, against LA, LA is a very credible team defense right now. It won't be like what it will be like going against Minnesota or San Antonio in the conference finals if they get past LA. But I do think SGA, he plugs more holes for your team and the dependability as an offensive player. Yes, Jokic as a talent, but SGA is very, very close to matching that same level of reliability. And obviously, by the end of the year, depending on what happens between Wemby and SGA, I think one of those two guys will hold the title, and it will like that title will be taken away from Jokic for the first time since 2023. And in terms of just the all-time standing, like I don't think there's really much to talk about here. The only interesting thing that I think people need to start realizing now, just the question about how the past 3 years affects his all-time standing. I think a lot of us jumped the gun. So after he won the championship in 2023, a lot of people would have thrusted him straight up to, top 25, anywhere between 15 to 25. I think I had him about 27 because I value older generations quite a lot. Right now, I might have him around the 20, anywhere between 20 to 25, around that range, right? And because I do value championships, I think championships, like relative to your era, they're still championships are like you're still the best player in the world when you win. It's the greatest feat in the world. And the more times you do that, depending on era, like obviously it's more talented now. So championships have to get weighted differently in today's era. But at the end of the day, like Magic Johnson's 5 titles is something that I still weight over Steph Curry's 4 titles. Especially considering like the talent that each of them had as well. But that's a different argument. But in terms of Jokic, for the guys that want to push him into the top 10 or just see that top 10 all-time vision for him, it's in big jeopardy just based off the last 3 years. Because the fact is, like, guys that are in the top 10 all time, their prime years typically end with more than one title and typically don't have like multiple blemishes right now. I genuinely think the OKC series was a relative blemish for Nikola Jokic. I'm not going to say the 2024 series against Minnesota was that bad. it was a struggle and it was pretty ugly. Again, it was him forcing that production. It wasn't the same glamorous dominance. And, in terms of like this series against Minnesota, this might be the worst of them all. So I don't know about top 10. I still see the vision for top 15 because at the end of the day, this guy has 3 MVPs in this talented era, this overwhelmingly talented era. He has 3 MVPs, still has the finals MVP, the championship. He still holds the most dominant individual run that we've seen in this era, in this generation, which is what he put on in 2023 in that postseason. And that weights a lot as well. Just the actual apex level that he reached, no one in this generation has reached. He's still got 8 All-NBA selections because he's going to make the All-NBA first team again this year. So 8 All-NBA selections. The longevity is matching up with him as well. That's another big criteria for me, your longevity of dominance, because that just shows the aggregate value you are giving to a franchise across a lengthened period of time. So longevity does factor a lot for me. And in terms of the resume, it's pretty sexy. He's got the rebounding and assist title season 2 right now, which is going to go down very historically. And he's got 2 years averaging a triple-double with the efficiency as well, which is fucked. So, sorry for the swearing, but in terms of the all-time standing, I still see top 15, but top 10 realistically might actually be out the window, considering the fact that this is supposed to be him at his absolute apex in terms of team, like affecting his team, and he also is being surrounded the best that he ever has, and he still hasn't been able to achieve multiple titles. But who knows? He could always come back next year. I just think as Wemby keeps growing and OKC keeps stabilizing, it's going to get harder and harder for Nikola Jokic in Denver with his current construct, like that harps around offensive quality. And there's not much athleticism, like physical motor athleticism, physical intensity, except for outside of Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. There isn't that much physical intensity in the starting unit. And except for Aaron Gordon, there is no skilled physicality on the roster. There are no guys that can actually bring just super skilled, like, shot making, play finishing, all this elite, absurd timing of their, actions and, their cuts and like their rolls, their crushes. There aren't many guys on the roster that can bring that, but also bring that brute physical intensity on the team. Actually crush boards, actually utilize their strength, fight, battle for positioning every single time, fight on the margins. There isn't anyone outside of Aaron Gordon that can do that. And with Aaron Gordon's injuries, it just looks pretty bleak for Denver because this was the highest that they could have gotten and they blew it in the first round. So who knows? A lot of questions to answer about Nikola Jokic, but I'll let you guys just kind of answer them. I just want to do a little discussion here as to how I kind of, pictured it after what was a pretty terrible finish to the season. But Nikola Jokic is Nikola Jokic, and he'll probably come back. He'll probably win another MVP in his career. Who knows? But Denver should be fighting for titles continuously for the next few years. This might just be a bump in the road, and I hope so because I'm a massive fan of what Denver's built and Nikola Jokic himself. But we'll have to wait till next year to evaluate him again. I appreciate you guys for listening. Obviously, let me know how you guys feel about Nikola Jokic. I mean, are you guys higher on him, lower on him, whatnot? How you think you'll end up all time, considering this is the biggest blemish on his career resume? But I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.